You wake up at 4 a.m. The liberation point is 300 miles away. Your prize bird, the one you've hand-fed for months, the one with perfect bloodlines, the one that cost you 3 months' salary, is in that basket. You're confident. This is the day. 6 hours later, you're standing at your loft watching the sky. Other fanciers are already celebrating. Their birds are home. Yours? Nowhere to be seen. Key sound familiar? My name's Dave and I'm the Pigeon Man. I've been racing pigeons for 23 years, and I've seen this heartbreak more times than I care to count. Hell, I've lived it. My first season, I didn't win a single race, not one. I was making mistakes I didn't even know existed. Here's the brutal truth. Most pigeon fanciers are sabotaging their own birds without realizing it. They're feeding them wrong, training them wrong, even breathing wrong around them. And the worst part, these mistakes are completely invisible until race day, when it's too late. I'm about to share 5 hidden mistakes that are costing you races, and I guarantee you're making at least 2 of them right now. The third one, it's what I call the silent killer. I've seen champion bloodlines reduced to also-rans because of this single error, and most fanciers never figure it out. But here's what gets me fired up. These mistakes are completely fixable. Small changes, massive results. I've watched beginners transform into championship contenders in a single season just by avoiding these traps. So if you're tired of watching other people's birds come home first while you're struggling, or worse, don't come home at all, then you need to hear this, because after today, you'll never look at your loft the same way again. Stick with me for the next 20 minutes and I promise you this, you'll understand why your birds have been underperforming, and more importantly, you'll know exactly how to fix it. This isn't theory, this is battle-tested wisdom from 2 decades in the sport. All right, let's get straight to it. Here are the 5 mistakes that are killing your race results. Mistake number 1, the feeding trap. You think you're giving your birds energy, but you're actually poisoning their performance. Mistake number 2, wing neglect. Everyone talks about fitness, but they're ignoring the most critical racing component right in front of their face. Mistake number 3, this is the silent killer I mentioned. It happens in your training routine and it's so subtle that even experienced fanciers miss it. I've seen birds with world-class genetics become mediocre because of this single error. Mistake number 4, the hygiene blind spot. Your loft looks clean, but there's an invisible enemy destroying your bird's potential. And mistake number 5, breeding for the wrong reason. You're selecting birds that look like champions but race like, well, let's just say they don't race like champions. Each of these mistakes has layers: psychological, physiological, and practical. And each one requires a specific approach to fix. More importantly, these mistakes compound. Make 2 or 3 of them, and you're not just reducing your chances, you're eliminating them entirely. But fixed, that's when the magic happens. That's when birds that were struggling to place suddenly start winning. That's when bloodlines you thought were average reveal their true potential. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive deep. Because by the end of this video, you're going to see your birds and your approach to racing in a completely different light. Let me tell you about Tommy Hernandez. 5-year veteran, decent loft, good birds. Every race morning, he'd give his team an extra portion of high-energy mix. Fuel for the race, he called it. Made perfect sense, right? Wrong. Tommy's birds were consistently finishing in the bottom third, not last. They had the fitness and genetics to perform better. But something was holding them back. It took me 3 visits to his loft to figure it out. The mistake? Overfeeding before races. Here's what most fanciers don't understand. A pigeon's crop can hold about 45 grams of feed. Sounds like nothing, but to a bird that weighs 400 grams, that's like you carrying a 10-pound weight in your stomach during a marathon. But it gets worse. When you overfeed before racing, you're not just adding weight, you're redirecting blood flow. The bird's digestive system is working overtime when that blood should be powering flight muscles. It's like trying to sprint right after a heavy meal. Here's the fix. The golden rule is to reduce feed by 30% in the 48 hours before basketing. Not starve them, reduce. You want them hungry enough to fly home aggressively, but not so hungry they lack energy. I taught Tommy this principle. Next race, top 10. The race after that, 3rd place. Same birds, same bloodlines, just proper pre-race nutrition. But here's the deeper lesson. Your birds should be maintaining racing weight year-round, not yo-yoing up and down. A racing pigeon should feel firm but not heavy when you handle them. Like a professional athlete, not a couch potato. Sarah Mitchell had beautiful birds, show-quality feathering, perfect stance, bloodlines that trace back to Jansen and Van den Abel. But they couldn't win a race to save their lives. I watched her handle her birds one day, and I saw the problem immediately. She never looked at their wings. Not really looked at me. She'd check for obvious damage, but she was missing the subtle signs that separate winners from losers. The mistake? Ignoring wing condition. Most fanciers check for broken feathers but miss the microscopic details that matter most. Look, a pigeon's wing is an engineering marvel. The primary flight feathers must be aligned perfectly. Even a 2 mm gap between feathers creates turbulence that costs speed and energy. But here's what most people don't know. You can feel this with your fingers before you can see it with your eye. Here's what to do. Every week, handle each bird and run your fingers along the trailing edge of their wings. It should feel smooth, like brushing silk. Any roughness, any irregularity, means feathers are misaligned or damaged. But there's more. The wing muscles should feel firm and full, especially the pectoral muscles that power flight. A bird in racing conditions should have breast muscles that feel like a tennis ball when you cup them in your palm. Sarah started doing weekly wing inspection. She pulled 3 birds from her team that had subtle feather damage she'd never noticed. The remaining birds, they started placing consistently. Same bloodlines, same training, just better wing management. The deeper principle, champions are made in the detail. While everyone else is looking at the obvious stuff, you need to be feeling for the subtle signs that predict performance. This is the big one. The mistake that destroys more champions than any other, and the worst part, it looks like you're doing everything right. Meet Frank Kowalski, 30 years in the sport, multiple club championships, birds worth more than most people's cars. But lately, his young birds were struggling. Not failing completely, just not reaching their potential. I spent a week tracking Frank's routine. Monday, 20-mile training toss. Wednesday, 40 miles. Friday, local flying. Saturday, basketing for the race. Sounds perfect, right? Here's the problem. Frank's schedule was inconsistent week to week. Some weeks he'd train Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Other weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sometimes he'd skip training if the weather looked questionable. The silent killer is this. Pigeons don't just build physical fitness, they build neurological patterns. Their internal navigation system relies on routine, rhythm, predictability. When you constantly change training schedules, you're not just confusing their bodies, you're scrambling their internal GPS. Think about it this way. Elite human athletes don't randomly change their training schedule. They build rhythms that their bodies can anticipate and adapt to. Your pigeons need the same consistency. Here's the fix. Pick a training schedule and stick to it religiously. I recommend training on the same days of the week, at roughly the same time of day, following the same progression pattern. If the weather's bad, do loft flying instead of skipping entirely. But here's the advanced principle. Your birds should know, instinctively, what day of the week it is based on your routine. When they see you approaching on training day, they should be eager and ready. When they see race preparation, their metabolism should already be shifting into race mode. I helped Frank establish a rigid Monday, Wednesday, Friday training schedule. No exceptions, no variation. Within 6 weeks, his young birds were trapping faster, flying more confidently, and placing consistently higher. The deeper truth, champions aren't just physically prepared, they're mentally programmed for success. Consistency creates that programming. Your loft looks clean. You scrape the perches, change the water, remove obvious waste. But there's an invisible enemy destroying your bird's potential, and most fanciers never see it coming. I learned this lesson the hard way. Second season racing, my birds started struggling with respiratory issues. Not sick enough to be obviously ill, just sluggish, slow slept times, poor recovery after training. I blamed genetics, blamed feed, blamed everything except the real culprit. The mistake? Microscopic dust and ammonia buildup. Here's what happens. Pigeon droppings contain uric acid. As they dry, they create microscopic particles that become airborne. Your birds are breathing this constantly. It's like asking a human athlete to train in a room full of chalk dust. But most fanciers can't smell it because they've become accustomed to it. It's called olfactory fatigue. Your nose stops registering familiar odors. Meanwhile, your birds are dealing with constant low-level respiratory irritation. Here's the solution. The sniff test. Bring a friend who doesn't keep pigeons to your loft. If they can smell anything, even a slight musty odor, your air quality is compromised. But deep cleaning isn't enough. You need ventilation. Fresh air should be moving through your loft continuously. Not drafts that chill the birds, but gentle air circulation that removes microscopic contaminants. I installed a simple exhaust fan with a timer. Runs for 15 minutes every hour during the day. The change was dramatic. Within 2 weeks, My birds were trapping faster and recovering quicker after training flights. Here's the advanced principle. Champions need champion quality air. The difference between first place and 10th place might be something as simple as air quality. Your bird's lungs are their engines. Keep them clean. Then this mistake breaks my heart because I see it everywhere. Fanciers spending thousands on birds that look like champions, but race like also-rans. Let me introduce you to Mike Stevens. Successful businessman, deep pockets, wanted to win races fast. He bought birds based on photographs, pedigrees, and prices. The more expensive, the better they must be, right? Mike's first season, 0 wins. His birds were gorgeous, perfect stance, beautiful feathering, impeccable bloodlines, but they couldn't find their way home from the corner store. The mistake? Breeding for looks instead of genetics. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. The most beautiful pigeon in the world is worthless if it can't race, and racing ability isn't always visible to the naked eye. What you should be looking for: racing intelligence. Some birds have an instinctive drive to return home quickly. Others are content to sightsee. You can't see this in a photograph or read it in a pedigree. The best racing birds often aren't the prettiest. They might have slightly uneven feathering or a less than perfect stance, but they have something more valuable: the burning desire to get home fast. Here's how to identify real racing genetics. Look at performance records, not just bloodline. A bird from moderate bloodlines that consistently places in the top 10% is more valuable than a bird from champion bloodlines that struggles to make the top 50%. But here's the deeper principle. Racing pigeons are athletes first, beauty queens second. You want birds that fly like champions, not birds that look like champions. Mike learned this lesson after 2 disappointing seasons. He started buying based on performance records rather than appearance. His 3rd season, multiple wins, including a first place that netted him a trophy worth more than his previous losses. The ultimate truth: champions produce champions, but only if you select for the right trait. Let's bring this all together. These 5 mistakes: overfeeding before races, neglecting wing condition, inconsistent training schedules, poor air quality, and breeding for looks instead of genetics. They seem small individually, but together, they're the difference between winning and watching others win. Here's what I want you to remember. Champions aren't born in the sky. They're created in the loft. Every feeding decision, every training session, every breeding choice is either moving you toward championship performance or away from it. There's no neutral ground in pigeon racing. Think about Tommy, who transformed his results just by adjusting pre-race feeding, or Sarah, who started winning consistently by paying attention to wing condition. Frank's birds started reaching their potential when he established training consistency. My own loft became more competitive with better air quality management. And Mike learned that true champions race with their hearts, not their looks. The beautiful truth about this sport: small changes create massive results. You don't need to revolutionize everything. You just need to eliminate the mistakes that are holding you back. But here's my challenge to you. Don't just watch this video and nod along. Pick one mistake, just one, and commit to fixing it this week. Maybe it's establishing a consistent training schedule. Maybe it's doing a deep cleaning and improving loft ventilation. Maybe it's really examining your bird's wing condition for the first time. Start with one change, master it, then move to the next. Because here's what I've learned in 23 years of racing: the fanciers who win consistently aren't the ones with the best birds or the biggest budget. They're the ones who pay attention to details that others miss. They're the ones who understand that championship performance is built one small decision at a time. Your birds have more potential than you realize. The bloodlines are there, the desire is there, the capability is there. What's been missing are the small adjustments that unlock that potential. Champions aren't born, they're trained in silence.